see a repeal process?
Well, I think he feels very strong about the product that came out of the House, but he recognizes that the Senate has a duty to review it and to come up with ideas, and if it can be made stronger, then great.
That's Sean Spicer. White House press briefing is still going on. We'll get to some of those sound bites from Sean Spicer here in a couple of minutes. First of all, I want to get straight to my guest. He is Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, calling us, I'm assuming, from beautiful Jefferson City. Jay, how are you?
I'm doing well, and it is a beautiful day here in Jefferson City. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I saw this alert come across this morning that the Supreme Court declined to hear a case seeking to reinstate North Carolina's voter ID law. And my first thought was, well, gee, we just passed one of those. You're busy trying to implement it right now. Is that going to have any impact on what we're doing here?
No, it'll have no impact on what we are doing. What is typically at the very bottom of those articles, if it's included at all, is that the state actually requested that their appeal be withdrawn. So in what's kind of an uncommon thing, the Chief Justice remarked that people should not look at the denial as the Supreme Court deciding on the merits, deciding whether or not the law was good or bad. He went so far as to say, we're not quite sure who has the right to appeal this because the Attorney General of the state and the Governor of the state have tried to withdraw the appeal, so that's why they're not looking at it. Our law, it took us 10 years to get our photo ID law passed in the state of Missouri. During that time, it was longer than it should have taken, but during that time, we used that time to look at what other states had done, to look at concerns that people have. We've made sure that under this law, and I say it all the time, and I keep waiting for a Democrat to be able to prove me wrong, but they can't. If you're a registered voter in Missouri, you're a legally registered voter, under this law, you can vote. We're not stopping anyone that's legally registered from voting unless they want to vote 2 or 3 times, in which case we do have a problem.
I'm glad. Are there similarities between the North Carolina, what they were accused of in North Carolina was that I think the people that sued over it said that it affected minority groups almost like a targeted strike. And I'm sure that's some flowery language somebody down there came up with to fight it. But are there any similarities between that law and ours?
Let me point to some of the differences that people won't realize. As part of that North Carolina law implementation, they were also restricting the times when people could register to vote and when they could vote. So it was looked at as a comprehensive change to the law with regard to voting rights.
Okay.
With regard to our law, all we're doing is pushing people gently to show a photo ID to vote. If they don't have, that non-expired state driver's license, they can use an expired one, but then they just have to sign the statement that they know they're supposed to have a current one, and that if they don't have a photo ID, the state will provide them one for free, and we're going to provide those IDs. But the way our law is written, there are 3 different ways you can vote. 1, just show up, show your driver's license. You just go ahead and vote as you always have. 2, show one of the means of identification that you've used in the previous elections, and you'll sign that statement that you're aware that you're supposed to have a photo ID to vote, that you don't have one, and that we'll provide you one for free if you don't. And then you get to go ahead and vote. And the third way, as I somewhat jokingly say, if you're out swimming and you realize that the polls close in 10 minutes and you run to the polls with only your towel, your suntan lotion, and your bathing suit, you're still allowed to file a provisional ballot. Yeah. I promised during the election we would protect the ballot box against fraud, but make sure every eligible voter can vote. This law does it. We'll get sued over it, but we'll win.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but just for people who aren't familiar with what happened in North Carolina, they passed the bill. Several groups sued them. They lost at the appeals court level, and the General Assembly and the then governor appealed it, and then the governor's office vacated because of an election, and a Democrat became governor. And then the governor tried to withdraw that appeal request. So it was a complicated issue down there to begin with.
Right. And if you look at one of the judges, Judge Peterson, that's been involved in this, in his opinion, he essentially said that doing this violates the Constitution, even the same things that the U.S. Supreme Court upheld in the Indiana lawsuit. So I think you're going to get a case like this that goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will say, wait a minute. If you have a rational photo ID law to make sure that people are who they say they are, just like we approved in Indiana, and you're not targeting minorities, yes, we will say it again, it is legal, it is proper. That's the sort of law we have in Missouri.
Very good. Is it going to, are we going to have this thing ready to go by, what, the fall?
We are. It goes into effect on June 1st. The first elections under it will be in St. Louis. The new mayor, Mayor Cruzen, has vacated her prior seat because she was elected mayor, so there's a special election to fill her prior position. The photo ID law will be in effect in St. Louis for that in July, and then a lot of individuals will have August elections. We've got a special election for the state Senate, another one for a state rep that was vacated.
Okay.
The photo ID law will be in place there. We've already been working with the local election authorities for months. We've started getting the information out to libraries. If you went and voted in April, they would have had signage and flyers out for show it to vote. So we want people to know we're already working to make sure that if you're a registered voter on Election Day, you can vote. And if you're not a registered voter, call us. We'll get you registered, too.
That's good. We're talking to Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft very quickly, because I got about a minute and a half left. Were you happy, unhappy with the legislative session that ended on Friday? Anything good come out of there that you were hoping for?
Yeah, it went really well. You know, I think it was a great legislative session for the Secretary of State's office and for the things that we do for the people of the state. We were able to increase public funding for libraries, which is a constitutional requirement under the Missouri Constitution. We were able to make sure that we got the $1.5 million we needed to implement photo ID correctly. And we have a little-known program. It's an address confidentiality program for victims of rape, human trafficking, domestic violence, a safe-at-home program. We were able to get some legislation changed in the last 2 weeks of the session to strengthen that program to protect some of our most vulnerable women and children. So we were ecstatic about the legislative session.
That's outstanding. Listen, Jay Ashcroft, thanks so much for your time. I'll direct people to your website, sos.mo.gov, to find out more about voter ID and the other things you're working on.
Or show it to vote.
Or show it to vote?
Yep.
Very good. Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you, sir.
Yep. Thank you. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft joining us there to give us a little bit of details on this lawsuit, and hopefully it won't affect what's going on. I'm sure somebody's going to challenge it in court. You can see that coming. When we come back, Senator Bill Eigel is going to join us to talk about that legislative session and the fact that, after all, they did stop the minimum wage hike in St. Louis. That and many more issues coming up.
This hour of The Mark Cox Show brought to you by Thomas Helbig, the official St. Louis financial advisor of The Mark Cox Show.
If you go to the hair salon soon, depending on which of the 14 locations you choose from, you just might see me there in a chair, because as the ladies in the studio right now can attest to, I've got hat hair and I need to get a haircut. And it's so easy, really. I've been going there for at least 12 or 13 years now. I always go to the same person, generally speaking. I can go online. I can go on my phone and make my appointment. I don't even have to call them anymore. They're efficient. You know, you don't go in there and, I mean, if you get there 10 minutes early, they're cutting your hair on time. You can get your shoes shined while you're there. It's fantastic. They've even got a drop-off service where if you want to get your shoes shined, you want to do it yourself, you can drop your shoes off and come back and pick them up the next day. And they'll be professionally shined. You're going to be so happy. I'll see you at the hair salon. They got 14 locations around the area. Check them out. Just go to their website to figure out the one closest to you at hairsaloon.com.
I bet you know the doctors, but you may not know the name Sound Health Services. It's the largest privately owned ENT group in the St. Louis area. The doctors at Sound's 15 locations providing excellent care for ear, nose, and throat conditions, hearing and allergy care, dizziness and balance issues, as well as voice and swallowing conditions. They offer the convenience of a large group practice with multiple office sites and prompt appointment scheduling. Great service and great care at soundhealthservices.com. Sound